Hey guys, welcome back to the final video of 2019 here on Toned In Entertainment. I have to tell you guys, I had a ton of fun making content in 2019. In the previous years, I was just kind of uploading a bunch of random videos, like some workout videos and some travel stuff, but I really didn't have much focus. The beginning of the year, I took some time off and I kind of reevaluated the channel, where I wanted to go with it. And it was really when I did my first interview of the year with Ming Chen from Comic Book Man, was really where I got the focus of where I wanted to go with this channel. Now here I've been doing a lot of interviews, a lot of comic discussions, a lot of movie reviews, but today we're going to look back at the interviews I've uploaded to this channel. Going into 2019, I had 0 interviews on this channel. Now I have 28. So we're going to start with a look back at all the interviews and how appropriate to start with Ming Chen from Comic Book Men.
So I noticed your shirt. Wonder Twins.
Wonder Twins.
Will we ever see them in a movie?
I think we should. I mean, they brought the comic book back recently, and they were just such a secondary character back in the day. They were just there on the Super Friends.
Yeah, but they were always kind of the comic relief, I feel, with Gleek, especially with Gleek, and the Super Friends. So, and I think the technology, CGI technology works where you can form them into some kind of water-based weapon or whatever, and then an animal. So I want to see this.
Now the second interview I did here on my channel was not only another unexpected one, but was a very cool one, and that was with Glacier from WCW. Again, I was at MegaCon in Orlando, just walking around, came by the Squared Circle Comics booth, and Glacier was just standing there, taking some pictures, signing some autographs. Again, I struck up a conversation with him. Again, we talked like we were like best friends from like back in the days, just talking about some wrestling. I asked him if I could do a quick interview. He couldn't have been nicer, so we did this interview, and of course, we had to talk some wrestling.
Everybody knows the era of the 90s when it was the Monday Night Wars, and that's why it's remembered as such a favorable part of pro wrestling history, is because competition made everybody better. I mean, we were going head to head on Monday night. We were trying to get the fans' attention, and so it was a great time to be a wrestling fan. It was a great time to be a professional wrestler, and I hope that what AEW is doing will bring back some of that competition. I definitely think it will.
In June of 2018, I attended River City Wrestling Con in Jacksonville, Florida, and a special thank you to the guys that run that convention, as I contacted them in advance and they allowed me to come in and do some interviews. And I have to tell you, I had a lot of fun at that convention, and I'm looking forward to 2020, that's for sure. And that day, I actually came away with 8 interviews. Now, when I go into interviews, I try to do a little bit of preparation for my interviews. However, maybe some wrestling lessons would have paid off, as I got to interview Sunny from the Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling.
I get so excited. There we go.
She's ready to just jump on out of here.
Let me give him a And sell it.
I am. Okay, now that we've talked to Patricia, and I've got a pain in the neck, so to speak.
Well, I could say I've been headlocked by a glow girl. Now, the main reason I was there to interview Sunny the California Girl was to talk about her comic created by Squared Circle Comics.
It's a must read. I lost my brother to suicide.
Okay.
And so I talk about this in the book. I beat up everybody because he was bullied. So anybody who bullied my brother? Sunny actually was the one that got in there and beat the crap out of someone who was bullying my brother. I know, because I used to lose in the ring. So that's a little shocking, right? I was tough. I was a tough girl. So this tough girl lost in the ring, but outside the ring, watch out.
Nobody played with Sunny outside of the ring.
No, Sunny was cloudy. There
were many rainy days for people that stepped into the way.
Also attending River City Wrestling Con was B. Brian Blair, one half of the tag team, the Killer Bees, and he also has a comic done by Squared Circle Comics.
Did you think back in the 80s when you were wrestling that you would be in your own comic book?
Maybe not in the 80s. Well, you know, when the LJN action figures first came out, Tony, I knew that there was a lot of life in different things. You know, we'd start seeing us in Cracker Jack boxes. You know, you'd pull out a thing and you'd have the Killer Bees, or you'd have the Ugandan Giant, or Coco Beware, or whomever. So toys and things started evolving, and the natural evolution, comic books.
It was a ton of fun talking to both Patricia and B. Brian Blair about their comics, but I also talked to the man behind Squared Circle Comics, and that's John CROWTHER. Not only does he have comics out for B. Brian Blair and Sunny the California Girl, but here's a couple more I picked up. Bruno Sammartino, you got Hacksaw Jim Duggan, you got the Rock and Roll Express. He has a lot of other comics out now and a bunch more coming in the future.
I do authorized biographical wrestling comics. So what we've done is we've sat down with a lot of legends from back in the day, starting with our first book was with Nikolai Volkov and Bruno Sammartino, the Killer Bees, these guys, and we get their life stories, and we're putting it in comic book form and staying kayfabe on the matches. It's kind of a nice way for fans to connect with the wrestlers, learn a little bit more about them, and take home some memorabilia at the same time.
Continuing our theme of comics and wrestling together, I interviewed Jared Davis at Tampa Bay Comic-Con. He's the creator of To Be the Man comic. Right now, there's only 4 issues out, and there's more to come. But if you love wrestling and you love comics, this is a must-read because it's unlike anything you've ever read before.
These are original characters doing original crazy shit. They are booze-fueled. They are on the road in 80s America fighting evil, fighting zombies and demons. I don't think Ric Flair did that during his career, but he's the greatest of all time, so it doesn't matter.
Going back to River City Wrestling Con, I interviewed Barbie Blank, aka Kelly. And since we like to talk a lot of pop culture here on Toned In Entertainment, I wanted to ask her what her favorite guilty pleasure movie is of all time.
Some movie that you could just turn on and just watch whenever.
I love Cruel Intentions.
Okay, with Sarah Michelle Gellar, right?
Yeah, that's back in my day, so.
No, I remember seeing that movie at the theater, and there's a scene where she's going up the escalator and he's standing there.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah. I remember Josh Jackson was in that movie too.
Yeah, and then Reese Witherspoon, Ryan Phillippe.
Yeah.
That's when they, I guess, met. So
yeah, that's definitely an interesting movie. Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah,
that's a good
thank you.
Next up, I interviewed Rebelle, and we were just having a fun, normal conversation about music videos and becoming a mermaid when we got a special guest appearance by Rosemary.
Did you hear my story? I thought that I was a mermaid and I poured salt in my bathwater and I didn't turn into a mermaid and I cried. And I cried. And I cried. Don't you feel sorry for me?
Why are you encouraging her?
No, we don't feel sorry.
I'm encouraging because I have a huge imagination myself. So there we go.
Imagination what? They don't exist in your realm. We could take you there if we wanted to, but we don't,
my God,
so we're not going to.
Oh, man. Now she was going to take me there for 1 second.
Absolutely not.
I don't know. I feel a letdown coming on here, unfortunately. Don't get your hopes too high.
Do you see the tear?
Yeah.
It's welling up.
There's a tear.
Good, let us taste it.
Okay, well.
What I have to deal with here on the road.
Next up, I talked with Effie, who was on a real tear in the independent wrestling scene in 2019, and I know there's big things coming for him in 2020. Now, during the interview, yes, we talked some wrestling and some pop culture, but he couldn't leave the interview without dropping some words of wisdom.
So I think nowadays you have to keep certain movies on DVD.
I get that, but I think that you could torrent them, you know. I think
don't torrent these videos.
Hey, let me tell you, kids, torrent these videos because the actors already got paid and everybody else involved is corrupt. Torrent everything. Fuck them. The actors got paid up front. Corruption is at its finest with the executives. Stop giving them royalties.
Okay, so we've learned that torrenting is good.
Torrenting is great.
Yeah. And keeping stuff longer than a year is bad.
Get rid of everything. And not just things you own. People you might know. Just once a year, you should make a list and put out your pros and cons and see if they still need to be in your life. What you'll find out, most of them don't.
Yeah.
Most of them don't need to be in your life anymore. There's a few you keep close, but like you think back, you're like, man, I had some good times with that person. Sucks that they suck now.
Now, my final interview at River City Wrestling Con was with a guy I grew up watching in the 80s, and that was Jake the Snake Roberts. And what a pleasure it was to talk to a guy I pretty much idolized growing up as a kid. Now, while we did, again, talk some wrestling, I'm really glad I did this interview because he let me in on a little independent movie he was doing called The Peanut Butter Falcon.
I did a movie with him called Peanut Butter Falcon. And now it won the South by Southwest Movie Festival. Won it. And seems the big thing on the movie is who is that sorry son of a bitch? And I play the sorry son of a bitch that abuses a mentally challenged kid that wants to be a wrestler. And I took it to another level, man, and really enjoyed doing it. The hardest part was wanting to apologize to that kid every night because I said some horrible, horrible things to him. But I'm really excited about the buzz that's going on with that. I think that's going to launch Jake in another direction.
Jake the Snake was right. The Peanut Butter Falcon, not only was it a fantastic movie, but it was my favorite movie of 2019. If you guys have not seen it, do yourself some justice, guys. Go out and check out that movie. It's absolutely brilliant. Now, speaking of the Peanut Butter Falcon, I got a little lucky because here in Miami, they actually had a media event, and I reached out to their public relations department and was able to set up an interview with one of the stars, Zach Gottsagen.
Now, in the movie, your favorite wrestler is the saltwater redneck. Who's your favorite wrestler in real life?
I would say Snake Roberts.
Jake the Snake Roberts. I actually met Jake the Snake a couple weeks ago, and he told me about this movie. And when he told me about the movie, I had to find out about it. And he said he felt bad because of all the stuff he had to do to you in the ring. But the Peanut Butter Falcon, we see in the movie, he can hold his own in the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And not only did I get to talk to Zach that night, I also talked to the writers and directors of the movie, Tyler Nielsen and Michael Schwartz, about the passion that went behind making the Peanut Butter Falcon.
Well, as writers, when you're writing a project, you get to decide where you're going to spend a couple years emotionally and then physically. So Tyler and I, when we write,
because you're writing, you're in post,
where do you want to spend a couple years? And in the world of the Peanut Butter Falcon, it's felt amazing, and it's exciting that it's now finally coming out and people get to see it, because we've been living it for 5 years and it feels great.
It feels great that now people are
welcome to our reality. It's dope. Rope swings, hanging out on a raft,
boats,
friendships, shutting your cell phones off, staying connected to your family,
catching fish.
Right. Yeah, because that's one of the things. There's a lot of movies that are like, they're adventure movies and they're comedy movies, but this one has like so much more heart and soul to it than pretty much any movie I can remember seeing.
We're none of that and all of that all at once. It's a beautiful thing.
Now, I love playing video games, especially fighting games. Mortal Kombat is always such a great game, and my favorite video game franchise of all time is Street Fighter. So at Tampa Bay Comic-Con, I learned that there was a show being put on called Street Fighter versus Mortal Kombat, and not only was the show excellent, but after the show, I got to talk to some of the show's stars.
Finally, we got to see Katana versus Chun-Li, two of the most famous female icons ever, I think, in fighting games.
It was a lot of fun working on the choreography for this fight because we had to figure out elements from both our characters that would blend well with each other. And with both of the characters being very kick orientated and having like insane abilities, we had to try and figure out the easiest way to make it like believable and actually sell well. And it turned out really well in the end.
Now, why haven't we got Street Fighter versus Mortal Kombat yet? Like, what do you think the holdup is in on that?
Good question. Rights, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It'll happen eventually.
Yeah, I mean, we get in Street Fighter Tekken. I mean, everyone wants to see Mortal Kombat versus Street Fighter, and we still have not got it.
We provided it.
You did. Finally, we finally got Street Fighter versus Mortal Kombat with you guys. And Johnny Cage.
What's up?
You were a lot of fun out there. You had the crowd going the entire time.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you. I appreciate you good people at home. Nothing but love. Yeah, I kind of was a big deal. And no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Jesus Christ. He's like this in real life, not just a video game as well.
Kind of typecast.
Now, while I love going out to cons and wrestling shows and doing interviews, there are two people out here on YouTube that do interviews, and I think they do it better than anyone. And I got to interview both of them here on the channel, and that's ALICIA and Chris Van Vliet.
If there's a wrestler that, has, no longer around these days, that you could have interviewed, 10 years ago, that's no longer with us, who would be the one person you would like to actually sit down and interview?
I don't think that Chris Benoit got enough love during the time that, I think that people, loved the character, and then obviously, very unfortunate circumstances with him and his family. I'd love to have an interview with him, just talk about his technical wrestling background, the way he grew up, the amazing people that he wrestled with, and he's a fellow Canadian as well. It's obviously so incredibly unfortunate what happened. It's just sad, and we don't really know all the details of what happened there, but a conversation with Chris Benoit would have been really fascinating.
Now, if you've been following ALICIA ATOUT's channel for any period of time, not only is she a huge wrestling fan, but a huge music fan as well. So I decided to ask her who her bucket list interview would be in the music industry.
Has to be Kiss. I was in Finland 2 weeks ago working for a festival called Rockfest, and they were so amazing to me that they actually got me to the meet and greet to meet Kiss, which was like a life goal of mine. And it was just one of those things where at a show they're just like go, 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 go. No time to do interviews, but I was like this close. I was literally like this close to them, and one day I'm gonna get this interview. I need to before they're done. It's the final tour, guys.
It's always the final tour. Yes, exactly. But I think a Kiss interview would be absolutely amazing to see from you. Definitely.
It'd be so sick. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Now, while I talked to ALICIA and Chris about various topics, there was one subject they both agreed on.
MJF, I mean, you just say that name and everybody has an instant reaction about him. I know I personally do. He's not a very nice human, but that's okay.
So it's not just a character that he's playing on.
It's a character. It's
okay.
just, it's always, that's who he is.
Right.
Yeah, that's MJF.
Don't worry about it. I'm not going to try to force feed you anything here while we're here. I already fed you before you got here. So we're not going to get the lady to come and knock on the door, and I'm not going to eat in front of you, and we're going to enjoy this interview here. So
that was a really good omelet, though. That one bite that he force fed me. Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah, we were watching that video. We were kind of cringing throughout the whole thing. It's like we could feel your pain just in your facial expressions during that interview.
I can confidently say I will never have another interview like that in my entire career.
Now, one of the interviews I saw on your channel was MJF. See, the face is already like that. Now, I didn't know much about MJF, to be perfectly honest, till I saw the AEW pay-per-view. And then we saw the interviews with you, and I've seen some of the interviews he's done with other people, and he just seems like a very interesting character.
Haha, that's like a really nice way to put it. Am I allowed to swear on here? It's YouTube, right?
Absolutely.
He's an asshole, and that's about all I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna give him the satisfaction of talking about him.
Okay, then we won't talk about MJF anymore.
Now, I've been watching wrestling on TV my entire life, but one of the things I've neglected was the independent wrestling scene, and I became a fan instantly when I attended one of Gangrel Wrestling Asylum's events here in Florida this summer. It was a ton of fun. So I got to talk to the man himself, Gangrel, not only about the independent wrestling scene, but about his asylum as well.
And what I love about these shows is you can come in here and every seat is a good seat. You know, I mean, it was $10 to come in here. I mean, you can't ask for much more. You could go to a movie, spend a lot more, and not get your money's worth. You come here, $10. Oh my God, it was so much fun. You're definitely gonna get your money's worth.
Well, awesome. I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad you're entertained because you know they work hard. They're in here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, honing in on their crafts.
Now, after that interview, Gangrel invited me back out and asked me to do some interviews with the students next time. So at the next event at the Dania Beach Casino, I did 3 interviews while I was there, and I started with the guy whose name I learned the fastest. He might have the biggest fan club in GWA, and that's Steve.
I've been so far at 2 of Gangrel's wrestling presentations, and I've sat next to your fan club both times, so it was very easily for us to learn who Steve was. You know, the first time we came out, we didn't know who you were, but within like a minute, we're all in the audience, and we're all going, Steve. And I'm like, talking to my girlfriend, I'm like, hey, this Steve guy, he's pretty good, you know, we're there watching you. But you know what? I think it's important to like have that fans and have that fan club, and you definitely do. And it definitely got you over, at least with us, because we learned who you were right away.
Well, that's amazing. I appreciate all the fans. I appreciate everyone that does the Steve chant, that, you know, rocks with me the entire time out there. I'm giving it all to you. You're giving it back to me, so I really appreciate that.
After Steve's interview, I spoke with 2 ladies who are making a lot of noise down here in the South Florida wrestling scene, and that's Tiffany and Nicole, the Lucero Twins. Now, while speaking with them, I asked them who their inspirations are, and we also discussed about how much women's wrestling has evolved.
Women's wrestling wasn't really thought of as a mainstream thing. For the longest time, I've grown up, I mean, I've been watching wrestling since the 80s, okay? I've been watching wrestling, and to be honest, when a women's wrestling match came on, it was almost like that match before intermission. There wasn't much respect for women's wrestling. It was like, oh, the women's wrestling match is on. Well, let's go get a hot dog and a Coke. But now, it's a completely different change. And let me be perfectly honest, like, my girlfriend and I watch a lot of wrestling. and we really enjoy the women's matches sometimes a lot more than the men's matches. So I think right now to be a wrestling fan and a fan of women's wrestling, I mean, it's definitely like, I think it's the peak, and I think it's only going to get higher.
Yeah, me too. It's like they do such a great job at putting it on the level that's just like you want to watch them wrestle. Sometimes more than men. You're like, damn.
Yeah, no, there's so many great wrestlers. I mean, from WWE to NXT to AEW, Impact. I mean, we saw Tessa Blanchard in action 2 weeks ago, and she's a beast on her own, doing the independent scene and Impact and whatnot. So it's just a great time to be a wrestling fan, and you know, especially if you love women and a wrestler as well, because I think there's a lot of opportunities right now, especially you guys are here at Gangrel's Wrestling Academy training to be at that next level. And I think, you know, once you guys are like fully seasoned and ready to go, and not to say that you're not fully seasoned, because I've seen you kick some butt in that ring so far in a couple of shows, so I'd be terrified to get in the ring with you guys, that's for sure.
Now, I couldn't leave that day without doing an interview with their champ, Lakai, and I thought it was only appropriate, since we were at one of Gangrel's Wrestling Asylum's events, to ask the champ if Gangrel and the Brood challenged him to a match, who he would grab as his 2 tag team partners.
Let's say he was to get the Brood back together, Edge and Christian, and he said, you know what, Lakai, we're coming for you. And we want to challenge you and 2 opponents of your choosing from any time period. What 2 wrestlers would you grab to be your partners to go up against the Brood?
We'll go with Stone Cold and Triple H.
Stone Cold and Triple H, yeah, there's no wrong going with those 2 guys, that's for sure. I thought you were going to go with The Undertaker there for a second. But
I would, but it'd probably be an unfair match.
In September, I headed up to Orlando and I attended my first ever Super Nerd Street event. And while I was there, I had to interview the man from the wasteland, Leon.
This is Nerd Street number 3 here in Orlando, Florida. This is actually the first one that I've attended, and it's been really fun. Like, it's just a different environment than your local independent show. It's a lot more loose. Like, it's a lot more fun. Everybody's just having a good time out there.
Exactly. I think the point that we wanted to make with Nerd Street is that wrestling is really a variety show, so let's lean into that and just do whatever the hell we want. And I think the production so far that's come out of that has been like just very insane. We have some amazing independent like dream matches that we're doing, but then we also have insane things like where I dress up as a clown from a horror movie series. So you never know what you're going to see with us.
That's true. That's true. It's like there's been a lot of like cosplay here as well, and then we've got still a big match coming up tonight. The main event is Tessa Blanchard versus Big Swole here tonight, and you know, so it's like you're getting a lot of everything. You're getting fun, exciting, you know, quirky stuff, and you're also getting like that real good competitive wrestling as well. So it's a win-win, and I think it was $12 to get in tonight. I mean, you can't ask for anything more.
Sure value.
Yeah.
Also at Super Nerd Street, I interviewed the mixed tag team of Serpent Eco and Aspen the Mermaid after their match. And not only do we all love wrestling, but I found out we have something else in common.
Now, you guys had some great moves out there. You came up a little short tonight, but there's always a revenge match, isn't there?
It's always fun. Like, we've wanted tag for a very long time. This opportunity came up last minute, you know, as of like last week, and we made it work, made it happen. We got matching gear, you know, made it all work. So, you know what? I don't know about you, Aspen, but I kind of want a rematch.
I think so. I mean, Jason Cage just kind of like kicked me in the face for no reason.
Right.
I don't really know what that was about.
Right, because I saw him, I mean, you were out there waiting for the tag, and he blatantly, illegally kicked you. It was completely unacceptable, and you definitely deserve a rematch.
Definitely. And then, like, he's a pizza guy. I'm a Taco Bell girl. We didn't really get a chance to get any before. We were kind of hoping somebody was going to bring us some. Okay. So I think...
I'm not saying we were robbed or we're malnourished by any reason, but I think after this...
prevent us from getting fed.
Once we get this rematch down, I'll treat us to Taco Bell and some pizza. How about that, yeah?
Okay, well, I'm glad. I think we would all get along, because as you can see, I'm a pizza guy and a taco guy. So.
The following weekend, I attended Blueprint Wrestling in Deerfield Beach, where I caught up with the Queen of Crazy, Kylene King. Now, the previous week, she had wrestled Serpent Eco and Aspen the Mermaid in that mixed tag team match at Super Nerd Street, and I let her know that that team is looking for some revenge.
Last week after your match, I interviewed Serpent Eco and Aspen both, and they were both kind of like a little banged up, but they did want a rematch eventually with you and your partner.
Well, if you don't know this, Serpent Eco is actually one of my original trainers. So him and I kind of know each other a little bit. So that's probably why he wants that rematch. He's like, all right, you got me this time, but let's see what happens next time.
Now, it was a lot of fun talking with the Queen of Crazy, but I also got to talk to one of her opponents for that night. She was in a triple threat match, and she was going to be wrestling Anna Diaz and also the Dream Girl Ellie. And I asked Ellie what her strategy is in a triple threat match.
You just kind of got to always watch your back to kind of make sure, like, there's always that other person kind of behind you. It's like, hey, you're in front of me, but there's also kind of someone behind me too, I guess. So it's kind of like you don't really know what's going to happen. It's always make sure you're looking at your surroundings, I guess, and then just make sure you hit everybody twice as hard.
Things got really colorful at Blueprint Wrestling as I interviewed wrestler Fabu, and I asked him what his inspirations are for his colorful costume.
Unfortunately, we're going to try to grab an interview with you before your match, but you've already had it because you had quite the elaborate costume on today. We could put a picture up right now of what it looked like, so that way you guys can see it. Now, what is the inspiration for that costume?
A lot of Adrian Street. Sensational Sherry, just being really over the top. Even before this character, I was still pretty flamboyant, but it wasn't until my trainer basically told me he wanted me to put on makeup. And I already had a butterfly on my tights, so I went to a Halloween store, found a pair of butterfly wings, did a whole bunch of makeup like Sensational Sherry. The first time was a lot like Sensational Sherry. It was like a lot of blush and a lot of... But since then, since my first trip to Japan, it's gotten more elaborate. And that's why I started doing the whole wing on the side.
Now, it doesn't get much more colorful than talking to a guy like Chuckles the Clown. If you guys have not seen this interview, it's an absolute riot. So guys, make sure you check out that interview. But while I was at Blueprint Wrestling, he was challenging, again, another guy we interviewed earlier this year, Effie, and I asked him what his strategy was going into that match.
Now, if you guys have been familiar with the channel, I've interviewed Effie, and he's quite the character, but I think we're stepping it up one notch here with Chuckles the Clown. Now, Chuckles, how do you plan on taking on a combatant like Effie today?
Oh, how do I plan? How do I plan? What a phenomenal question. You've obviously done this before. Boop. How do you plan for a match with Effie like this? Do that, yeah. Oh, or I could do that. Oh, that's smart. No, don't do that. That's crazy. That's crazy. That's crazy. You don't do that because that's too insane. Ooh, you're right. But if I did this, then he would counter with this. But because I know he's going to counter with that, I'll give him one of these. Boom shakalaka. The crowd goes wild. I leave with all the ladies in the land because I'm Chuckles, I'm the Clown King, and I forget your question. Woo!
I don't even think it matters what type of question I ask anymore, so we're just going to keep going with it.
Yes, a lot of the content on here is wrestling related, but we are still a pop culture channel. And one of my favorite TV shows of all time is The Office. And coming in July of 2020 to Scranton, Pennsylvania is the first ever Office Super Fan Fest, and I recently got to do a Skype interview with Adam and Amber, two of the people who are putting this awesome event together.
It's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, all day. That gets you into the convention. You get to buy stuff from the vendors. You get to participate in Office Olympics, Cafe Disco. We're probably going to have some screenings of some episodes going on. We're going to have trivia contest. We're going to have Q&A panels. We're going to have, all kinds of cool stuff going on.
Now, my final interviews of 2019 were at CCW, that's Coastal Championship Wrestling's event in Tamarack, Florida. Now, my first interview of the night was with a guy called Agony. Now, I might have bit off a little bit more than I can chew.
Now, Agony, if you were to challenge any wrestler from any time period, who would you challenge? Okay, guys, I think I'm going to cut the interview here.
And after the matches that night, I got to interview the man behind the mask, and that's Charlie. Thankfully, he's just a tad bit more talkative than his masked alter ego.
How's it going, man?
Good, man. Wow, this is already a more talkative interview already, and we just started.
I can't control the monster. You know, he's just a part of me. What can I say?
Now, 2019 was a ton of fun here on Toned In Entertainment, and we ended it with a party. And who better else to throw that party than wrestler Cha-Cha Charlie?
Can you show me the cha-cha real quick?
You got to do it with me.
Absolutely. Yeah, all right. I think that's the most rhythm I've ever had in a video. Thank you so much. It's not bad.
All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for this look back at my 2019 interviews. And I'm super excited and pumped for what's coming in the future in 2020. I have a lot of things lined up. So, guys, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe here to Toned In Entertainment. Now, are there any maybe independent wrestlers here in Florida that I have not interviewed that you guys would like to see me get an interview with? Leave me a name in the comment below. All right, guys, make sure you subscribe here to Toned In Entertainment for future interviews.
Subscribe to the channel. Do it. Go now. Do it now.